Welcome to another Warmaster's Workshop tutorial. Today we're going to work on turning this $3 this $3 thrift store toy blaster. I think it was it's a Laser Challenge Pro blaster. I think I've maybe seen these in stores over the years. But we're going to turn this into a Star Wars a Star Wars-ish blaster, something that you would probably see used in the movies, or that would work well with your Mandalorian kit or whatever Star Wars costume you're working on. Now, what I like about this blaster is that it actually has it's got some internal sound effects, and it also has some little graphics displays here, a little LCD screen. So when you turn it on, I don't know if you can hear that. So it's got a little power up, and then it tells you when there's no armor or when there's no ammo in it. So you can actually see right here, there's no ammo. So when you press the ammo button, it refills the ammo. And then as you shoot it, you can actually see the ammo going down. And it does have it's got an auto, and it's got a single shot, like a sniper shot going on. And there's different buttons here that do different things. And then you can reload. And it makes just some really cool little sound effects. They're not the loudest, but it's neat. It adds an extra layer of, of awesome to it. So what we're going to do is, what you can see is that the back here is missing on the, where the batteries would hold the batteries in. So we're going to cover this probably with a piece of leather that can be taken off so that you can change the batteries. We also have to cover up these screw holes, which we'll do. There's several screw holes all over it. So we're going to have to cover those up and then Bondo those nice and flush. But what's also cool about this thing is that you can press this release button up here and pop this off, and it's also like a kind of a tech blaster. It's also got a little stock in there, kind of like the E11s do. But anyway, we've got some logos that we need to get off of here and some words here. I'm actually going to keep these words at the bottom because they're actual functions. They're not logos. They're not like brands or anything like that, but they're actual functions. So I'm going to keep those on there. But we're going to take everything else off that doesn't need to be there. And then after we get it done, we're going to paint it up, and it should be good to go. We're going to add a bunch of greebles to it. We're actually going to make this into a sniper rifle. So I've got a long piece of PVC that fits perfectly down into there. So we're going to use that to make this into a sniper attachment. So that's actually where we're going to start first. So let's get started on making the sniper attachment. Then we can start working on de-earthifying this thing by getting rid of all the logos and such. We're just going to set this aside, and we're just going to start working on the sniper attachment for now. So let's get started on that. All right, so here's the front part of our blaster, what I'm going to call the blaster rifle attachment. It's got a neat little folding. It's not a tripod, it's a bipod that's built onto it here. So it actually it's pretty neat. So what we need to do is we need to take this thing apart because we've got to get this this piece of PVC in there to make our barrel. And as you can see, it fits pretty close. I mean, it will fit through here. So it'll fit through the hole right here. The problem we have though is that the blaster, the hand blaster portion if we want to have this thing break down, we've got to keep that relatively clear because the barrel for the blaster pistol fits through there and locks. There's a locking ring. I don't know if you can see it, but there is a locking ring right about here that locks that in. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull this apart. We're going to take this apart. There's maybe, let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 screws that hold this together. We're going to take this apart, and what we're going to do is we're going to mount our PVC barrel in that way. So we may have to put some kind of foam or something in here to brace the barrel. So let's go ahead and we're going to take this apart, and then we'll come back and we'll see what we need to do to get the barrel mounted in there. So we have broken down the front half of the blaster where we're going to put our barrel, and I've got all the screws here. Now I always suggest getting one of these magnetic, I call them a screw bowl, or a nut and bolt bowl, a mechanic's bowl. I've heard it called a lot of different things, but I put my screws in there. It's magnetic, so they don't come out, and I make sure to put it somewhere where the bottom will be stuck to the table. So anyway, so what we want to do here, this is the locking ring that I was telling you about before. This goes next to the release button, so it slides in right over here, and when you press the release button, it pushes it so that it releases the back of the blaster. And then there's a little spring over here that keeps it locked in place normally. So you've got that, and then you've got the shroud at the end here. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue to use those pieces. We don't want to lose those pieces. I've just got them sitting to the side. We'll need to put this back on the front shroud here when we put the barrel in. But I've also got some pieces of, this is just some open cell, or I'm sorry, open cell foam. It's somewhat, it's a firm sort of foam, and it should fit right in here. We're going to put some on each side here, right in the body of this, and we're going to carve this out, and I'm going to use some hot glue to hold it in place, and that's going to be what holds our blaster barrel in place. We've got a lot of room right in here on each side, a huge amount of room. So let's cut that down real quick. I've got just my X-Acto knife here. I'm just going to make a line, sort of a cut right here where there's sort of there's like a little shelf here, a rise, and we want to get the foam on this side. But you want to use a dense foam because it needs to really apply a lot of pressure to this barrel to hold it in place. And when I say barrel, I mean PVC pipe. Alright, now we're going to cut this down just a little bit. And then when we put our barrel in there too, what it's going to do is it's actually going to it's going to hold pretty fast and hard against this foam. It's just going to have a lot of pressure on it when we screw it back together. So I'm going to put these little foam pieces over here. I'm actually going to take my hot glue gun here, and let's apply some hot glue. The hot glue is actually going to melt into the foam because it's much hotter than the foam, so just keep that in mind. But once you got it on there, you should be good. Doesn't require a whole lot of foam. The barrel is going to hold it in place. That's going to do all the hard work. We're actually going to glue the barrel on the inside of the shroud here with some E6000. So I'm not super concerned about that. So I'm just going to lay this one off to the side. And the same thing with this one. Move my shroud out of the way. I'm going to take that little bit off right here. cutting into the foam ever so gently and then bringing it down. Same on this side. Just like that. That sits in there perfectly. Now let's go ahead and we're going to cut. I'm actually going to cut this back side off since it's a little bit rough. Put those little pieces over there because it's just always good to have a few little pieces of foam hanging around. Alright, same that we did before, or with the other side, we're just going to hot glue this. My hot glue gun is extremely old, so don't laugh at me. I need to get a new one. Alright, so there we go. So the foam is in. Now we're going to actually test this. I'm going to pull all the pieces of the locking ring out, as well as the release button. But we want to test this to see how well this does. We may need to cut the foam down a little bit. So here's the shroud. So we'll leave that up a little bit. The great thing about the shroud is it positions it holds the position of the barrel here, so it's not cockeyed. But that's how it should look. Just like that. It's actually kind of up a little bit. There we go. Trying to get it even is the hard part. And part of the reason why that is because the hole for the actual blaster barrel, the on this side, the hole that this thing fits through, that blaster barrel, is actually slightly higher than the shroud hole. So that could be a bit of a problem. See, the blaster, the sniper rifle barrel is actually going to fit right there, right about where that rib is at. So let me get it. What we're going to do is we're going to clamp this in place on one side, okay? We'll clamp it in place. We could probably, actually, you know what? I take that back. Let's go ahead and actually put this together. And then what we'll do is we'll glue the end of this barrel in place. Oh, but I think for right now, if we just pop this together, just like that, there we go. It should be pretty golden. Now, the other thing you got to worry about is it going to be too much? Is it too much for these little screws to hold? That's the thing that we've got to be careful of. These are friction screws. They're absolutely not going to be the toughest screws in the world. So, but with them all in there, they should do a relatively. Oh, you know what I forgot to do before we get too far here? Let's get the barrel release back in place. But the friction screws, you got to be a little careful of those kind of screws because it doesn't take much to strip those puppies up. Alright, I'm just putting the barrel release mechanism back in place here. It's like field stripping your rifle almost. Alright. So we've got this together, and as you can see, right here, I've actually stuffed some of the foam, the little foam bits. I've stuffed some of those in here just to make our barrel a little more tight. So I'm going to use some, let me stuff that in there just a little bit more, just to make sure. I'm just going to use my screwdriver here and push that in, just to make sure that stuff is, the foam is down nice and flush in there, because I don't want it to potentially keep my locking ring here, my shroud ring, from fitting. There we go. Alright, so let's go ahead and add some hot glue here. And I want the hot glue to sort of melt down around this. And I want it to melt the foam here and kind of make a nice area. I'm going to use a little more foam. I'm going to pack some, let's see, right around in here. The hot glue will melt the foam though, and that's kind of what you want. Watch your strings. Alright, that's looking good. So let's go ahead and get our shroud ring on here. There we go, just like that. Now, I know that fits well, so what I'm going to do here, because we don't want this to ever have to come off again, I'm going to use some E6000. There we go. Put a little E6000 around here. Just four good sized blobs of it. And it doesn't matter if you use the clear or the black. I've got both. I just grab the black. There we go. Now let's go ahead and get that on. There we go. The barrel's on nice and locked in place. It's not going anywhere. I'd say that's pretty stout. So let's take a look at this thing together. Let me move some of this out of the way. Make sure everything fits well. So there's the end of our barrel as it comes back. So all we need to do now is we will have to sand this a little bit just to get the words off. That's not a big deal. We're also going to have to fill up these screw holes. This thing is never going to open up again. There we go, it pops right off. And we need to add some greebles to this as well. So let's think about greebles for a second. And then we'll come back and we'll look at what we've got available and what we can add to them. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, action. So we have got our barrel attached, and I've also taken some greebles and a little bit more PVC pipe and made an accumulator here, just a power accumulator. While we hit these with, these are just some rails that we're going to use as detail pieces, just some greebles that I've kept. I don't know where I got them out of. It was, Lord knows where I got these things. I've had them for years and years in my greebly bin. So I just want to go over them with the sandpaper so that when we get ready to paint it, which we'll have to paint this thing with some fusion paint or something that will stick well to plastic. When we paint these, I want to make sure the paint sticks. It should be, yep. Yeah, she's bonded on there good. She's not going anywhere. Alright, so these stay up with friction. And it's also free to hold your hand there. So if they look like they're going to come down, what I'll end up doing, or what I will suggest to whoever gets this rifle, I'll probably suggest to them to maybe put a couple little tabs in here that this thing will snap into. But for the most part, these things stay down okay. So the next thing we're going to do, you can see that I've already sort of pre-sanded here and here. I've already pre-sanded the plastic for these rails here. So we're just going to hit these with some of my ultra, I'm going to call it ultra glue. What we want to do is we want to go right around the edges here. Alright, so there's the first one. And it's already on there. We got a little bit of glue residue there, but that's alright, because what we'll do is we'll take a Q-tip with a little bit of acetone on it, and we'll just lightly get that off if there's any on there. Same with, there's a little on the tip there, but that's alright. So let's go to this side. We want to make sure we know how far we place that. It's about 1.5 millimeters. So let's get our other little rail here, and we'll, this little greebly detail piece. If you get a little bit of overglue or anything like that, some residue, don't worry. We're going to use a little bit of acetone to get some of that off. The next one, or I should say the last piece, is going to be this piece right here, which is kind of like, I'm just going to call it a sort of like a cooling vein. I don't know that I don't think I want to put it like that. I feel like it looks better. It makes more sense this way. It's much more flush. If I put it this way, I've only got 4 I've only got a few places where the glue connects. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Is it like a forward scope, an after scope? I don't know. So I don't want to, I'm just going to go here, and what we're going to do is we're going to use these two areas right here to line it up. So let's scuff this up. You don't have to use super low grit paper for this. I think this is probably 220 grit. I just want to get enough of the unpainted plastic exposed to get a good little bite on here. We're going to brush this off. All right. So let's start. We got some glue left over on here. So holding it at the ends. We can call that an extra cooling fin or something. I don't know. Whatever we want to call it. We're going to hold it here to make sure that bonds. I think that bonded pretty good. I'm actually going to turn it over. And we're going to start filling these holes. Now I'm just going to use some hot glue to start filling these holes with. And you're going to say, why hot glue? Well, it's a whole lot easier than Bondo. Because we can cut the hot glue off, and then we can go back behind it with a little bit of body filler. Of course, getting the strings off of you is the fun part. All right. This is already dry up here, so let's trim this excess out real quick. right there. All right. So we're going to let that hot glue dry, and then we'll come back and we'll trim it down. And in the meantime, let's start taking the screws out of our pistol base here. So we have taken our blaster completely apart at this point. As you can see, it's totally open, but I was able to get it open. I was able to get all of the switches and buttons and everything out. This is the front little barrel piece, trigger, and these are just the various little buttons and switches that have functions to them. And what we're going to do is I'm going to paint all of these black. So I'm going to start working on that. I'm going to get those painted up, and we'll be right back to look at that and see how they look after painting, and then we'll start putting the main body of the blaster pistol back together and get all that done, and we'll test it to make sure we haven't broken any wires or anything, because it is, as you can see, there's a lot of screws here that we've got to get back in place. So we went ahead and we put our buttons back on. You can see I've got the trigger on. It's painted up. All of the little control buttons have been painted and replaced at this point. We've got batteries in here, so you can hear the gun firing. So what we're going to do, I want to make this speaker a little bit louder. So I have a really tiny, this is a 2.5 watt speaker. It's a Class D, it's a Class D amplifier. My bad, it's a 2.5 watt amplifier. And I think it's good. There's no reason it shouldn't be good. So we're going to put this in the system and see if we can't make our speaker a little bit louder. The other thing we may try to do is, if I can find, I've been looking for a spot for potential lights, like a LED for the barrel light. But I can't find any that are intermittent with the trigger. The only thing I can find is the speaker. So there is kind of a trick we might try to do with that by using if I have one here, we can try using a sound-powered transistor. I might have one hanging around here somewhere. It basically just requires a plus and a negative, a positive, and then a sound in. But for now, I'm just going to focus on the sound, and let's get this put in. So right here is our speakers, and I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little thing that says SPK. I believe that says SPK minus and SPK plus. Let me get this little string of glue out of the way. I pulled up the hot glue here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these speakers out of here. Whoops. And before we do that, though, let me pull the battery out. Just need to pull out one, really. There we go. You can also see that I had to elongate the power line just a little bit because this thing would not flip open. So I cut the power line, the positive line from the batteries, and just made it a little bit longer. So I also figured out how to take the, there's a little pressure rivet, I don't know if you can see it right here, that's in those stock ribs, and I was able to push one out so I could flip this thing into two pieces. It was kind of a pain in the butt, but it works. Anyway, so let's go ahead. We're going to desolder these two lines right here. This speaker negative, we're going to do it first. It's quick. I'll set it to the side. Speaker plus. Take it off too. Now, there's almost no way to know which one is minus and which one is plus because they're both yellow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little piece of tape, put it on there like that. So now I know this one's the plus and this one's the minus. Little micro or mini Molex connectors. These are just from an old computer that I salvaged. And luckily they have a plus and a minus on them. See if you can see that. Right there, that's supposed to be the power LED plus and minus. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to snip these and we're going to solder them right into here. Alright, we're going to do, the green is going to be the negative. The white is going to be the positive. We're going to make sure we leave enough so that we can bring it over. There's a little cubby right here. This is where we're going to set our little amp. And I have a backup amp just in case this one does not work. It's a wee bit bigger, but it will work. Alright, so we've got our mini Molexes soldered in. Right up here you can see where I've got the plus. Let's see if my camera will focus back up. Let's go right down here. There you go. You can see the plus, or the positive and the negative are both soldered in. That's the white and the red wires right there. So let's go ahead and 2.1 watt. So it's a 2 watt. So if we, and the other cool thing about this one too is that it's got a, right here it's got a little dip switch. It's got a dip switch gain on it. So it's, you can set it, let me bring this up here. You can set this to be loud, more loud. It's basically a volume control right here. And on the back of this, it tells you what the gain is. So we can play around with that a little bit, but let's go ahead and get our wires and our terminals here for our speakers. Our speaker, I should say. You could run 2 speakers on this if you had a second speaker slot. This is a stereo amplifier, and it does run off as little as I think 2 to 2.5 volts, but there's 4 volts in this system. There we go. That's much louder. Whoop. So let's take a look at our blaster here now that we've got the whole thing, the 2 halves together. Let's take a look at it. And we do, as you can hear, we do have our sound effects going. We've got the single, which is the sniper shot, and then we've got the automatic. The display still works. So we've managed to keep all of the, for the most part, all the functionality of this original blaster here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add an extra stock onto the back here. So I've got this. This is off of a toy AR-15, like a little kid's toy. It's very small. I don't want it to be super big because we're able to extend this, and I want it to be able to. I want it to be the right length for an adult. So this would basically be if we were, if we had this, if we were laying down in a prone position, or if we were at a sniper position, and you wanted to, you needed something, a longer stock to put your shoulder against. That would be the need for pulling this stock out. Other than that, the stock would normally be right here in this position. So kind of a shorter Sportster version. So what I've done already is I've already cut the hole right here that this will fit into. And what we want to do, I'm actually going to pop this blaster in half. So one thing to show you too is that our fit is so tight where this goes in, the paint it's just getting raked off. So not a whole lot I can do about that, unfortunately. It's just the nature of how tight those two pieces fit together. So that is what it is, but at least that's a good thing. So what we're going to do here is we're going to glue this in place first with some super glue just to get it stuck in place. What I've done is, I don't know if you can see, there's a little rib in there, and I have cut a corresponding line. Actually, let's clean this up just a little bit. I have cut a corresponding line here to equal the same height as that rib, so that this just slides in there, and it slides on that rib, and that kind of keeps it nice and straight. Okay, so our stock here, our shoulder stock, has been glued to the back here of the extendable stock. So what we're going to do now that the glue is, it's not completely cured, but it's fairly cured. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to pour some epoxy resin in here to seal all this up, and this will probably keep these two pieces. It'll probably bond these two pieces moving forward. But what I've done is I've sealed around the bottom here and around this the seam with plastiline clay, so it doesn't run out. That should make it fairly watertight. I'm just going to put it in my on my table vise here, and we're going to turn this around a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. Alright, so we're going to pour it up in this top portion here. We're going to pour it in here so you should be able to see it. So let me mix the resin, which I'm doing that off the camera. It's starting to get warm. That means it is time to pour. We're going to squeeze this a little bit and make a spout. Make sure we wipe it off of any part we might spill it on, because that'll be permanent. Pour a little bit more. So our resin has dried. It's nice and dry. This isn't going anywhere. As you can see, it's bonded in there pretty darn tight. I don't think it's going to break off at this point. So what we need to do is we need to fill in this area here with the with some body filler or Bondo, because I don't need a super big piece to fill this up. All right, so let me get some here. We want to try to do this as nice as possible. All right, we'll mix up some more of this, and I'm gonna go ahead and fill up the rest of that, and then we'll come back and we'll start cutting it down and sanding down this area here and cut. So we have our stock on here now. It's pretty. I'd say it's extremely tough at this point. It's not going anywhere. It's we used some epoxy resin. We've used some E6000 or E3000, E6000. Sorry, we've used super glue, epoxy resin, and E6000, and then we've covered it here with a layer of body filler just to fill in that area. So now all we really have to do is paint that. So, which will happen when we do our paint job. So what we need to do now is we need to get these logos off. So here, we need to get this logo off down here, and get these words off over here, the 2007 patent information. So I'm just going to use some, I'm just using some 100 grit sandpaper, and look, this just sands right off. So originally my plan was to make some sort of leather sleeve or something to go over the battery compartment here, but the more I got to thinking about that, the more I realized that might be problematic, because a leather sleeve is going to retain moisture. It's right over the batteries. Probably not the best idea. So what I did was I went to eBay. I actually found two of these in pistol form. Okay, they don't have the extending stock on the back. They're just the pistols. The only two on eBay. It was like 20 bucks for the two, and I completely broke one down to get the electronics out of it and to get this battery door off, which I have sanded down, and we're going to fill. This is where the logo was. We're going to fill this in because I don't know if you can tell, but there's quite a bit of a depression there. So we need to fill that in so we can get it flush. And then this will just slide right up there. And then you tighten it down at the bottom right here with this little screw. So let's go ahead and let's fill this up. All right, so let's let that dry, and then we'll sand it. We'll get that nice and flush, and then we can start painting this thing. So we have finished priming and painting our blaster. As you can see, it's fully blacked out. I'll do a quick flip here. We did retain our stock for the sniper mode. We also have our bipod that's integrated into this, so there's a couple different modes. We also have our electronics, so we can turn it on. So you can hear the electronics. It's relatively loud. It's not the loudest electronics in the world, but it doesn't need to be. We also kept our we also have our our display over here. So it will also tell us when the fictional ammo is gone and when it's time to reload. So I took the scope and I took it completely apart and I painted it so we could get rid of the fluorescent, lime greens and all that that's over it. So it's a nice gray color, and it actually does function. And you can see, I don't know if you can see it through the camera or not. You can see there's different reticles in there. And there's one without a reticle at all. And that one actually pops out a little bit, so there is a little bit of magnification. It's not great though. So all we really need to do at this point is just add a little weathering, which if you've seen any of my other videos, you would you could apply those same concepts here. You could use some acrylic paint. That's what I'll be doing here. Is I'm going to acrylic paint this up with a paint wash, and probably not going to use any silver on this. I don't really want to, a gun that is blued typically doesn't show silver even when it's dinged. It's just blued metal. So I have plenty of shotguns and such here. I've dealt with that stuff most of my life. The only thing that you would see on the barrel of a gun would be rust. So I'm not really going to put that on this, but we are going to put some dirt, a little bit of dirt, maybe around the handle, definitely on the scope, probably on the stock back here. We'll put some rust, and I'll throw some pictures up on the Facebook page of what this looks like when it's completely finalized. But yeah, this is our blaster rifle that we've turned from a VR Troopers Laser Pro game into an actual, like, something that looks like it would come out of Star Wars with some sounds to it, some electronics. So yeah, it's been a fun build, and hopefully this has given you some ideas on what you can do to do your own rifle customizations from other existing toy guns that may be out there, Nerfs or so and such. Those things are totally acceptable to use as bases for more Star Warsy looking weapons. So hopefully this has helped you with that, and I appreciate you watching this tutorial. And always feel free to reach out and contact me if you have any questions. So thanks a lot, and we will see you next month in the Warmaster's Workshop.